Welcome to the Millennial Rant, a podcast about whatever's bothering me today. With topics ranging from politics to pop culture, there's a rant to cover everyone. For more Millennial Rant content, you can join me on the web at millennialrant.com. Not gonna lie, it is super easy to blame people for their stupid decisions, right? You see somebody do something and you say, "The heck were you thinking?" It's basically second nature, right? Because you see somebody do something stupid and you're like, "Wow, I'm so glad that wasn't me because that was really dumb." And I mean, I'm not immune to it by any stretch of the imagination, but something that I have realized as I've gotten older, especially when I look back on my own personal stupid mistakes, I really started to think about how we condemn people for the mistakes that they made, but we don't really do anything to help them avoid making mistakes in the future, or even avoid making the mistakes that they've already made. We just look at people and say, "Wow, that was really dumb," and then they must just be a stupid person. And I don't think that's the case. At least I hope that's not the case in my case. Like, I can do stupid things and not be a stupid person, right? So, one of the things that our society has kind of done is make it so that you have to be perfect all the time. So if you make even the slightest mistake, well, you're just written off. You're just a lost cause. And that's not healthy for anybody. It creates a sort of void in people where they're constantly, sucking in all of this negative energy, fueled mostly by this driving need to be perfect, right? And you can't make a single mistake. I think the better you are at things, the easier it is to fall into this trap of perfection. And at least that's the way it seems for me, because when I was an undergrad, I was kind of all over the place. Like, I didn't really care about the grades that I did as long as I did my best for the most part. And there were times where I was just like, yeah, no, this isn't going anywhere. And I would deliberately give up and then retake the class. Definitely would not suggest that for financial reasons, if nothing else. But, I was more forgiving of myself when I was younger, especially in things that I already knew that I struggled with, like math in particular. I took, quote, stupid people math 3 times before I passed it with enough confidence to be able to move on to the math that was necessary for me to be able to get my degree. And the mistakes that I allowed myself to make while I was in that class 3 times gave me the boost that I needed to be able to do better the next time I took it. But now that I'm older and I've been going to school for a ridiculous amount of time, I'm a lot less forgiving of my mistakes in whether that is in things that I struggle with actively, or things that I didn't realize that I struggled with, or things that I'm actually typically pretty good at. And my self-tolerance for mistakes has gone way down. And I didn't realize how much that had come to impact my life until I got a B in a class that, to be perfectly frank, I had no business getting a B in. But I was so nervous about the stats class that I was taking that I allowed this other class that I was incredibly well versed in to fall by the wayside. I was livid. I was like, how could, of all of the class, really? Like, I had resigned myself to getting a B or even a C in stats. My goal was just to pass. And I actually ended up getting an A in that class because I put in so much concentrated effort. But the fact that I got a B in a class that I shouldn't have gotten a B in, it was an entertainment education class, and that is literally what I do. I was completely intolerant with that mistake that I had made. And it was really kind of surprising to me, like the amount of absolute vitriol I had for myself that I would allow this to happen. And it was really kind of eye-opening for me. And so the next semester, when I was taking other classes, and, I was a bit more tolerant of allowing myself to make mistakes. And I, you know, continued moving forward. I think I got an A and then a B in that also, but it wasn't the same, like, absolutely detrimental sensation that I had before, partially because it was a class that I had to work a little bit harder in. It was more of a struggle for me, the class that I got a B in that time, as opposed to the one before where, again, I had no business getting a B in that class. But recognizing that I had made a mistake previously and that I was going to make mistakes again moving forward in the future was liberating for me. And it was a reminder of simpler times where I was allowed to make mistakes as long as I was trying, and that I was allowed to make the same mistake as long as I was still trying. And things that I've noticed in, my nieces and my nephews as they're being raised up by their parents, who absolutely love and adore them, don't get me wrong. But there's this sense of, I told you once, just do it. And it's for multiple different things, and every kid is different. Some kids struggle more with self-discipline. Other kids struggle more with, cognitive processes and things like that. And noticing where kids have a tendency to make mistakes, I've seen that for whatever reason, the tolerance of the mistakes that these kids are making is a lot lower when they make when they make the same or similar mistakes over and over again. And I'm not immune, like, not at all. But at the same time, there's a reason for mistakes. It allows us to recognize what went wrong and how we can change it. And by only punishing the mistake, whether that's the intent behind, the discussion that you have with the kid or not, you're saying you've made a mistake, you cannot make a mistake, how dare you make a mistake, and the kid learns, I can't make mistakes. And that creates, psychoses, it creates neuro issues, it creates anxiety issues and other mental health problems. And that's not to say that we should, encourage or enable mistakes, especially the same mistake, but recognizing where that particular mistake is coming from and going to the root of the problem is much more productive than just getting angry at somebody for making a mistake. And that includes yourself. Like, I'm my worst critic. Absolutely. 1000% my worst critic. I will find things that I have, particularly when it comes to my writing, I'll find things that I've written years ago and I'll be like, oh my gosh, what is your problem? How could you, what were you thinking? And it's like, well, obviously I was at a different place 12 years ago versus where I am as a writer now. And it's not particularly fair of me to judge past me based off of present me's, abilities. But what about, yesterday's me or 3 seconds ago me? We're not always firing on all cylinders, right? We're not always working at our absolute pinnacle. And there are going to be moments where we have lapses. And I can't even tell you how many times I've done something and then a literal split second later, I was like, oh my gosh, why are you so stupid? What is your problem? That's not healthy. It's not helping me. And it's certainly not, teaching me to be better. It's just being mean to myself and not allowing myself to make mistakes. So I'm definitely not saying that I am perfect at this, but I'm going to try to be nicer to myself when I make mistakes. I'm going to try to be nicer to the people around me, to the stuff that I see on social media, to the stuff that I see on the street at random. I just want to be nicer, to have that sense of grace, right? To allow mistakes to happen, correct where necessary, and do better moving forward.